Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy 4 Invasions and a Wedding, written by ArgusTheCat. When I was 8, my world was invaded. They came without warning in great black ships that dwarfed the pitiable transports that my people had made to ferry us between our home and our only colony further out in our own system. We had never seen such power, such brutal technology. We had dared to hope that we were not alone, but this was beyond anything that we were ready for, and we knew it. It was a small mercy that they didn't open fire upon our cities, as some of our darkest stories assumed that they would. Instead, they broadcast an ultimatum, informed us that they expected their demands to be obeyed to the letter, and then sent a series of preliminary orders. Governments and corporations toppled, daily life became chaotic, and by the time the ground troops started landing in their flat, boxy craft, revealing flat, boxy soldiers in flat, boxy armor, we were prepared to give anything just to pretend life could go back to normal. They made slaves of us, in a way, giving us just enough hope for a better life that we would work ourselves to death under the new system. We were bent to one whip of mining, drilling, harvesting, but also technical skills, data entry, code testing, market research. We learned things that we wouldn't have known for decades. We improved our technology as best we could while still meeting our species-wide quotas. They took what they wanted, and eventually the thrill of invasion wore off. Skirmishes had happened at first, but then they simply died away as people gave up or saw that we were only slightly worse off than under our own corrupt politicians. The invaders similarly lost interest, pulling back to their ships and just collecting the tribute every so often, like bored gods. When I was 15, hardened from the mines, we were invaded for a second time. They came in sleek ships of gleaming metal, sensors, and broadcast arrays, turning them into gleaming pincushions of communication. We'd never seen such refinement, such purity of design. We knew that we were not alone, but we still were trapped, and this new species came to us as potential saviors. Of course, we should have known that wouldn't be the case. They struck a deal with the invaders to use our world as a comm relay for their great network. We would be forbidden to use the broadcast technologies, for fear of interfering with the great machines that they planted out in the oceans. Their technicians came down in shining silver needles to show off their shining metal bodies as they built their monuments. They took slaves as well, engineers and programmers and guards and even simple couriers. They were well treated, fed and paid as much as could be spared, but they were still slaves. The things they learned put them so far ahead of the rest of us that even those simple servitors would be gods to us. But some came back and started teaching, while we were huddled in our old cities at night. Eventually, the new invaders finished their work and, leaving a few token ships in orbit to bombard anyone who broke the broadcasting rule, they left. We had access to the network now, but it was a culture so alien that it threatened to destroy us as much as any missile from the sky. But we held together. Old stories kept passed on by word of mouth, and we hoped for a day that we could reclaim our world. Hope is a dangerous thing. When I was 26, mindful of alien words, we were invaded a third time. We were hardly surprised anymore. We knew now that there was a greater universe out there, teeming with life. We just wished that we would ever have gotten to know it on our own, instead of seeing the massive globular ships that drifted into our system. We had never seen such nightmares, such monsters as these. They too struck a deal with the first invaders, but the tribute they demanded was not one of hands or minds, but of flesh. Black, boxy soldiers next to twisted, unarmed growths shuttled down to our world day after day, stealing away people seemingly at random. They vanished from our lives. We could not bear to think what they were used for. Food, pleasure slaves, something worse. Of course, it was something worse, as I found out when I was one of the ones grabbed one night. When the cost of keeping us in their experiments became too great, those taken were returned. myself amongst them. We had been first poked and prodded, then divided up. Then a group had various compounds injected into our skin. Over the course of months, we changed, flesh warping into patterns that couldn't quite understand. Some went mad, but the rest of us kept alert. Through the pain of the changes, when we weren't under observation, we watched. We asked seemingly innocent questions. We stole glances at their monsters. We listened. We learned. We came to understand that we were being made into new forms for use as world shapers in the service of these third invaders. Our group was declared a failure, though, and so, flesh drooping from missized bones, we were sent back. Their ships left, leaving only a few behind to monitor their experiments and contact new ones on stable populations. Before the century was over, it was said our people's original form would be gone, lost to the tides of history. At the age of 33, broken from minds, poisoned by a network, warped by a serum, my world, my home, was invaded for the fourth time. They came in 1,000 ships in many styles, then some were the size of the first invaders' warships, bristling with firepower that could destroy a world. Some were spiked with communications gear and warp field projectors. Some were plated in living armor, some were sleek, some bulky, some shone like stars, some were blacker than the void itself. Some were all of these things at once. We waited in our decaying cities and broken homes to see the new injustice that would be dealt us, trapped in our own gravity well, watching the sky through makeshift telescopes. I was one of the ones watching, and so I was one of the lucky few who got to see a flat box of Dreadnought ripped into pieces by a volley of weapons fire that showed itself as sparkling dots through my scope. I was privileged to witness one of those bristling needle ships smashed by plasma fire and burned brighter than their ships would have ever shone. I was allowed the distinct honor of witnessing the bulbous nightmare burst like a bubble under the combined might of a dozen different aggressors. I was one of the ones that saw the first landers come down and ran out to meet them. Fear had left me years ago, along with hope and pride and faith in justice. But now, all of those came rushing back as I dashed through the streets to meet our new occupiers. I would serve them willingly for what they had done. I would throw myself at their feet and bow and scrape in payment for the vengeance that they had brought my people, brought me. What would they look like? What would they demand? It didn't matter. All that matters was that they couldn't be like the others. I reached the landing point. A few others were already there, but most were still hiding in the buildings. They, too, had given up long ago. And they hadn't all seen the new way of things as I had. I watched as the lander opened, and a number of small beings swarmed out. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. White suits with simple red cross on the arm. 2 of them spotted me and headed my way, pointing. They carried cases. So many of them were carrying things, bringing more and more out of the lander. Weapons, tools. One of them reached me, and in perfect language asked, "Are you wounded?" I couldn't speak. I was confused, stunned. They spoke like us. They wanted to know if I was hurt. Did they only want the healthy? "I can still work," I rasped out, twisted tongue slapping against split lips. The 2 looked at each other. One of them retracted their helmet as they turned back to look at me. A mess of brown hair over pale skin stared down at me with a look that I've come to universally recognize as pity. "No. Are you injured? We won't hurt you. We're here to help." "We're here to help." I laughed. I laughed and laughed and kept laughing until my damaged lungs gave out, and I collapsed. I heard the medics shout over me, felt rough-suited hands on skin that long ago ceased to feel properly, and then I was unconscious. When I was 33, I met my first human. When I was 36, my body had been restored through medical technology that would have cost our planet its entire treasury, if they hadn't simply given it to us for free. When I was 42, I moved back to my hometown, finished with my second tour of the human armada, repaying my saviors by joining their campaign of liberation against an angry galaxy. By the time I was 44, I'd helped rebuild the old city library with the help of some of my new neighbors who were kind enough to have brought some of their people's books to contribute to the whole. By 45, I had devoured the stories they brought and gone in search of more. At 47, I finished co-writing a book with a longtime friend that I'd met a decade and a half prior. At 48, that friend and I were more than just friends. 56, and our adopted children were growing up together with our new kids in our neighborhood. 59, and we had a pet dog imported from Earth. 60, and I finally convinced her to let us get a pet bell as well. Another decade since then of memories, dreams, family, friends, and advancement. My neighbors are now from 4 species. My friends are from a dozen more. Our world is rebuilt, better than ever, with the help of our galactic friends. I've traveled so much farther than I ever imagined, and seen so many wonders, but all of them come up short compared to the simple pleasure of knowing who's waiting for me at home. The first human I ever met was a headstrong medic who visited the first Lorani she'd ever met in the makeshift hospital that they'd set up every day until he agreed to stop being such a groveling, rambling fool. 37 years have passed since then, and I still haven't totally given up on the rambling part. Happy Liberation Day, my friends. And to you, honey, happy anniversary. End of story. I just want to thank the T5 patrons and channel members. Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Australia the Dreamer, Trygan95, Hudic Yol, Meridian117, Alithia, Jordan Bucksbaum, Angry Marine, Albarden Gusta, and Barkey. Thank you very much. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed. There are links down below, both to support this channel and for the author of this fiction. Anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.